Good evening, everyone, and welcome to vBrownBag. Today, we'll have Kristen, and he will talk about his VCDX motivation. Here you can see the usual handles that we use from LATAM and EMEA. You want to engage in the conversation on this session, we have the vBrownBag hashtag that we'll be monitoring. Also, we usually run on these schedules. For EMEA, it's at 7 p.m. as today, for example. It's not necessarily on Tuesdays, but well, we usually try to run on Tuesday, as today. As I said, my guest today is Kristen. I am Dan Belmonte as host, as I will be hosting this session. Nothing to say. I will hand over to Chris. So, Chris.
Cool. Thank you very much, Dan. Okay, I'll just share my. You can see the PowerPoint?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. So I'll start by saying a little bit about myself. So my name is Chris Noon, as Dan mentioned. I'm the Network Technical Lead at Clarinet in the UK, and I'm currently a VCDX NV applicant. What that means is, while I'm on the VCDX track, I haven't actually got my number yet. I've submitted my documents, and I'm hoping to defend in March, April of this year. We'll go on to the documentation and the defense stages later on in this presentation, but that's the area I'm at. I started blogging about my VCDX journey. I'd like to start before I take my VCDX exam and hopefully get my VCDX number. So I like to start before and do a kind of before and an after picture. So you can check that out on vmusketeers.com. There's a couple of us that blog in on there. There's a couple of current VCDXs that have already blogged about their journey. And there's a couple of the experts that blog around different topics. So definitely go check that out. As Dan said, that's my Twitter handle. If you want to ask any questions after this presentation, or just reach out to me, and I'm pretty responsive on Twitter. Okay, so first of all, what is a VCDX? So a VCDX is VMware Certified Design Expert, and it's VMware's highest level of certification. So you have the associate exams, the professional certifications, the implementation experts, and at the very top of that pyramid is the design expert. And what that's meant to do is highlight your design and architectural skill set. So if you're an architect and you're looking for that recognition of being a design expert, or if you're beneath the architect level and you're looking to break that glass ceiling, then the design expert is there to help you do that. There are 4 tracks depending on your interest. There's DCV for data center virtualization, NV for networking virtualization, and you have CMA for cloud management automation, and DTM for desktop and mobility. There are around 100 plus DCV is the most popular VCDX track. The NV has, I think it's 90 plus at the moment, and the CMA and the DTM have a few spread around the world, but there aren't too many of those. That's a really specialist area. So why would you want to become a VCDX? And more importantly for this topic, why did I want to become a VCDX? So for me, it was the challenge. I got my VCIX in NV about 2 years ago, and I wanted to embark on a different journey. What was my next certification that I wanted? So there was a couple of options available to me, but I decided that the VMware Design Expert was the one that I wanted, and it kind of fit with the way I see my career going. And that moves us on to the next point, my career progression. I want to kind of move into that lead space, that architectural space, and obviously doing that, you typically end up getting a little bit more money, whether that be on standard salary or bonuses. But for me, it was the challenge, but the career progression and the money kind of came hand in hand with that. But if I've missed any of the whys, please let me know and I'll add it to the presentation for the next time. And then it's more, how do you go about getting your VCDX, and how did I go, or how am I going about it? So first of all, there's some prerequisites. This is a prerequisites for all of them, but for me specifically, it was the VCP NV for the network track. Then I had to get my VCIX NV for the network track. Luckily, the VCIX for NV, you only need to sit the deploy exam, the deploy VCAP, and you get your VCIX for things like the DCV. You'll need the design and the deploy to become a VCIX. Those are prerequisites for your VCDX submission. There are some loopholes, we'll say. So for the networking track, if you're a CCIE, you don't need these prerequisites. You can move directly into the VCDX track. So that might help some of you. And then you have to move on to the not so simple task of submitting your documentation and have that documentation be accepted. We move on to what's encompassed in the documentation a little later on in this presentation, but that is worth far more than one bullet point in a presentation. It really does take some time. Then once you've done your documentation, you move on to your defense day, which I'm hoping to do in March and April. And that comes in two kind of sections, and that's the design defense and the scenario defense. We cover that a bit later as well. Once you've passed the documentation and the defense day, you should get your VCDX number. Easy, right? So how do you get started, or how did I get started? It's a long journey. I've seen some people say they've done it in 6 months. Some people have done it in 24 months and anywhere in between. It really depends on where your skill set is from starting. I mean, how far do you need to jump from whatever level you're currently at to the VCDX level? And then it's the buy-in from people. I mean, what you have to understand is this could be a 6-month, it could be a 24-month journey, depending on how far you need to go. So for me, the buy-in was from family and work. So for my family, I sat them down and explained that this was going to be a journey that I needed to embark on. And I scheduled 2 hours every morning to work on VCDX. That's weekdays and weekends, but you can divvy out your time however you want. But I think it's important to make sure that these people know that there's dedicated time for VCDX. And luckily for me, the company that I work for, Clarinet, and that's my shameless plug for the podcast, they bought into the VCDX journey. They would like a VCDX at Clarinet, and I would like to become a VCDX. So they've actually agreed to sponsor me for this journey. This kind of covers the cost, the point below. It is an expensive qualification. It's $1,000, sorry, to submit the documentation, and it's $3,000 for the defense day, which we get to in a little bit. But that's not including all travel costs and stuff like that. So just understand that this can become an expensive qualification. So just know that before you start it and get to that cost stage. When you're submitting your documents, you can submit them in one of 4 windows in April, June, September, or December. This varies by week or 2. You can check the VCDX calendar for that. And then typically what you do is you submit your documents in one window and you defend in the next. So for example, I submitted my documents in December and it loops back around to April, and that's when I would hopefully be defending. And then you move on to cost, which I've covered, the $1,000 for the document submission and the $3,000 for the defense day. And then you have to think about, do you have a project? So I was lucky that I had a real project that I could use for the design document. But some people have used fictional documentation, fictional projects. But I think I would find that very difficult. So I chose not to go with fictional because I would have to remember these made up scenarios, and then I would have to lab a lot more stuff up depending on what situations I thought, or what design decisions I went through. And you have to remember a lot of stuff that maybe you wouldn't have lived through. So for me, it was the real project that I chose. And it's good because I found that I lived and breathed it every day for the last 2 months. I've helped deliver this project from conceptual to the physical delivery of it. And while I say I've done real, there is fictional elements within my submission document. And I think that's quite common with everyone I speak to. So I don't think you have to just stick to one real scenario. I've injected fictional elements, whether it be to meet the design decision slightly better, or something I prefer to defend, or to match the blueprint a little better. And I think that moves us on to the blueprint. What you'll find is when you speak to aspiring VCDXs, current VCDXs, panelists, if you're lucky, they always tell you to read and understand the blueprint. I mean, this is key. When I first read it, it seemed a little vague. I wasn't quite sure on how it would take me forward. But what you find is, as you go further and further along your VCDX journey, this blueprint resonates more and more. So you end up reading it 2 or 3 months later down the line, and it makes a lot more sense. Okay, Dan, you're going to handle the questions, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Brian is asking if you have currently a mentor, and it's currently deployed the CV and it's a Swift kick. You want to answer yourself, Chris?
Yeah. So the question is, do you currently mentor? I'm currently a
Oh, sorry,
VCAP
mental.
deployed DCV and need a swift kick in the behind motivation-wise to sit the VCAP design. So what I would say is I would recommend to get a mentor in your track. So I would be an NV track. So I would look for someone in the DCV track. That would be my recommendation. But later on in this presentation, we do go on to how to find those mentors. So that should help you there.
Oh, no worries, Brian.
No problem. So I say a mentor is good, but mentors are better. So I have a dedicated mentor. His name is Luca. He's fantastic, but I have to remember that he's a current VCDX. He's an architect. So he's a very busy guy. As well as his work life, he has a personal life. So while I have him as a dedicated resource when I can, I lean on a lot of current VCDXs and a lot of aspiring VCDXs. So they say, two brains are better than one. Why not add 10, 20 brains? It helps you going forward. So I have discussions with VCDX MVs, VCDX DCVs about design decisions, about something in my document, the layout, presentations, alternative scenarios, all those kind of things. You can ask multiple VCDXs. So get yourself a mentor, but don't feel too bad about leaning on multiple others. I would highly recommend doing that. Okay, so this kind of moves us on to the resource section. On the vcdx.vmware.com website, that'll help you, Brian. You can actually go there and filter by track. So you can filter by DCV and then filter by mentors. And then you can find yourself a mentor depending on your track. DCV and MV are a lot easier because there are a lot more VCDXs around. The CMA and the DTM, it's a little more difficult, but they are out there. I've kind of already covered the blueprint and the mentor section, so I'll move on to the VCDX workshops. So I've attended 3 VCDX workshops in total. I've attended 2 in a remote scenario, and I've attended 1 at VMworld last year, where I met Dan. And I found these really useful. While the content is the same and the content delivered is always the same, the presenters obviously slightly different, and the conversations that people spark up are slightly different. So you get little nuggets of information about the VCDX and how to go about it. And I've found as I've gone along my journey, I've asked different questions in the workshops, which have really helped me. So I'd recommend if you're starting your journey or you're on your journey, just go to a couple of workshops. They've really helped me. And that moves us on to the V community. The V community, it's a common phrase you see used on Twitter, but they're sorry, I've got another question.
Yeah, Mohammed.
Chris, do you think it's better to use the NSXV or NSXT for the DCV-NV, knowing that NSXV is on its way and end of life? So it's completely up to you. They allow both at present, so you can do NSXV or NSXT. My project is in NSXV because it was started about a year and a half ago. But you can do T. If you're starting your project now, you can do V or you can do T, but yes, you probably have to keep in mind that if you do an NSXV scenario, it is going end of life, and at some point, they'll probably like you to be leaning towards T. Okay, so as part of the no problem. As part of the V community, everyone on there is extremely helpful, whether that be V experts, VCDXs, anyone participating in VMware conversations. They are all incredibly helpful, incredibly easy to reach out to and speak to. It's one of the best communities I've ever seen, and I'm really reaping the benefits of joining it and talking to all these guys, whether it just be general chit chat or talking about specific VMware technologies. It's one of those really good resources, and that kind of ties into both the blogs and Twitter. So like I mentioned before, if you go onto the vMusketeers website and you check out my first blog post, there are links to other blogs that I found really useful throughout my journey, whether it be on specific topics about the VCDX journey as a whole. There's a podcast on there. There's a couple of really good resources blog-wise on there. So I'd encourage you to go check that out. And then Twitter. I joined Twitter about a year ago, thanks to my friend Bilal. And while joining that, I've become more involved with the V community. I've been able to reach out to people that maybe I wouldn't have reached out to, and they've helped me along the journey, whether it be preparing my documentation, checking out my presentation, going through design decisions. It really is a fantastic, and it comes back to that V community. And then finally, there's a VCDX Slack group. If you're really serious about your journey, if you've found a project, you're fine with the funding, and you have yourself a mentor, reach out to me and I'll get you added to the VCDX Slack group. Once you're in this Slack group, there's a bunch of aspiring and a bunch of current VCDXs, and they're all incredibly helpful, much like the rest of the community. And I found this, to be honest, the best resource. So I work with a couple of guys in there, Pavel and Simon, and while we're on different tracks, we're on the same timeline. So we motivated each other throughout the last year. I mean, a year is a long time. We've motivated each other throughout the last year to make sure we're kind of on par with how our documents are coming. We've joined calls with each other to play devil's advocate on why that design decision, why not this design decision. And that's really been a great motivator, getting all this VCDX stuff ready. And to be honest, I don't think I'd be as far along the VCDX journey as I would have been without this group. So now we move on to kind of like what I need to, or what we all need to do to become a VCDX. So first of all, you need to prepare your document submission. So this consists of a design document, which, to be honest, is the bulk of your work and the bulk of your time. And while this is the bulk of your time, don't negate the other 4 documents: the implementation, installation, SOP, and testing documentation. So while these are supplementary documents, they still need to be to a certain standard. They still need to deliver everything that needs to be delivered. So when you submit your document package, you get accepted. So I've heard stories where people have spent a lot of time on the design documentation, not so much in the other documents. And because of that, they've been knocked back and had to resubmit. So spend a couple of days, a couple of weeks on each document and really make sure that one of these documents isn't your Achilles heel, that the full package of documents is there when you submit. When you submit with an application form. I recommend looking at the application form about a month or 2 months before the submission date. I found it actually really useful just to tweak my document and make it read a little bit more like the submission, but like the application form wanted. I thought that was excellent. And then you package all that together, you send it off, you pay your $1,000, and you wait about a month to get feedback to determine whether you've made the design stage or not. If you've made the defense stage or not. And this moves us on to the 2 defenses. So you have the design defense and you have the scenario defense, and we'll cover both of them now. So the design defense is your first one. It is based on your submitted design. It's a 75-minute window where you're recommended to prepare a 15-minute presentation. That can be a few minutes less, a few minutes more, depending on whatever you need. And this is typically a high-level business presentation. And then you get about 60 minutes of Q&A. I say Q&A is maybe not the right phrase to be used. So what will happen is these 3 panelists will be able to ask you any high-level, any low-level questions that they want, whether it be on design decisions, the technology itself, business reasons. It can really flow up and down. And the key you have to remember, and what I'm preparing for, is you can do your 15-minute presentation, but they might interrupt you in the first minute. And you might spend 10, 15 minutes talking through different areas they want to talk to. So while you're preparing, make sure you can stop and start your presentation at any stage. That's key for the design defense. So you will be jumping around. And when you answer these questions, it's been recommended to me, kind of go business first and then go technical if they probe for more information. Don't go too deep at the beginning. Remember, so I say only an hour and 15 minutes, but that does go by quickly. So high level and then go in more detail if needed. Then you get a 15-minute break, or I will get a 15-minute break, and you go for your scenario defense. And your scenario is based on your submitted track. So my design, for example, is an NV track. It's submitted in NSXV. So it means my design scenario will be in NSXV as well. This is delivered in a 45-minute window. And if you read the blogs, which Dan has kindly posted in the chat, if you read that, there are a bunch of links to different ways to tackle the scenario defense. And the advice I've got, and I think it's true, is you tackle it the way you feel best. There's no point in using someone else's methodologies and trying to tackle a problem using someone else's methodologies. Do what feels natural to you. So the posts that I've liked more kind of recommend the 10 to 15-minute window to gather requirements, constraints, assumptions, and risks, and then a 30 to 35-minute window of designing a high-level solution. But again, with much like the design defense, you might have to go back and forth. As you're doing this high-level design solution, they might throw another requirement or another risk at you. So be prepared to bounce around back and forth when you're going through this scenario. This will be the same 3 panelists that you met the 15 minutes before, so they'll be familiar with you. And the likelihood is they'll probably try and focus on areas that maybe you didn't deliver in your design so well, because obviously they want a well-rounded architect. They want to make sure you tick all the boxes rather than just 4 out of 5. So be prepared to go into areas that you may be not too familiar with. And in this stage, they'll kind of act more like a C-level audience rather than highly technical, but you might float between business requirements, high-level business needs, and technical. So be prepared to float around as well. So now you've finished your design document, you've defended in both scenarios, and you've passed and you've got your number. So what are the benefits of becoming a VCDX, and why would you want to become a VCDX? So for me, it comes into 2 categories. First of all, it's the knowledge and the skill. The solution knowledge I've gathered just on the journey, not even passing, has been tremendous. So now I can see how vCenter, vCloud Director, and NSX all tie together to deliver business goals. So I can see that from a C-level perspective, and I can talk to C-level people and talk to them about how they deliver business goals. And I can also talk to technical people because I've dove deep into each of those technologies, each of those products, and I can work out what they need to do technically. So what's great about this is you have that bridge between the technical to the C-level, which works fantastic when you're presenting and you're doing workshops. So I found that my presentation skills, especially since preparing for the Defense Day, and my workshop skills, my whiteboarding skills, have got a lot better. So talking to customers, whether they be technical, whether they be C-level, I can deliver the content that they want. And then it's the VCDX methodologies. As you're going through the design document and you're preparing your defense slides, you're picking up all these VCDX methodologies and best ways of working. And you don't have to use them all, but I've used most of them in my day-to-day work. And I found the solutions I deliver now using these methodologies make the projects go a little bit smoother and come out a little better. So I've really learned a lot throughout the entire journey, sorry. And then it comes into the elite status. So you become one of worldwide. So at the moment, there are 288 VCDXs in the world. So hopefully if I pass in March, April, I'll be one of 300 worldwide. If you pass in the next couple of years, you'll be one of 400 worldwide. I mean, that's pretty elite as far as that goes. A VCDX automatically gets vExpert licenses, so vExpert status, sorry. So you get those licenses and the perks of a vExpert, and you're able to lab up a lot more stuff at home. You get some cool merchandise. So to celebrate the occasion, you get a free T-shirt, free hat, some stickers, that kind of stuff too. So you can wear those around the house and look cool. And then finally, you get your own private lounge in VMworld. This is where all the VCDX can go and talk to one another. And to be honest, I can't wait for that, provided I pass, to meet all the guys that I've been speaking to online that have been helping me throughout my entire journey. It'll be a great place to meet them and thank them. So that's the end of the presentation. If you've got any questions, please fire away. Again, the blog is vmusketeers.com. And if you want to reach out to me on Twitter and ask any questions later on, please feel free to do so.
Chris, meanwhile, people is maybe asking or something. I will make you I would like to ask you some questions. For example, I think about the VCDX, about the benefits, not only as you mentioned, the merchandising, the cool merchandising that you will receive and so on. I think that also, for example, for the big community, for example, my VCAP, DCV, for example, and when I see people with the VCDX, I see them, I mean, for example, if you are, and I expect and I hope so, the VCDX March, I will see you as now, for example, but with a different maybe mentality. I mean, I know that people, as you said before, spend between 6 and 24 months, or even more, just dealing with that everyday working and taking a lot of daily time. I mean, you have to put a lot of hours on the designing scenario, trying to improve your whiteboarding skills, presentation skills, and so on. So I think that people that reach that level, it's not only technical and it's not only the elite status. I mean, in the V community, you see that people who reach out that, for example, Chris Porter that recently earned his VCDX. I was like, wow, this guy, I knew him since he earned his B cap too. He's now VCDX, and I'm like, wow, he did it.
Yeah.
And now I see him like, wow, he's like an Eminem. I mean, people who earn the VCDX outside the B community, I suppose that they saw them like, wow, he's a real technical, real a real star, we can say, a real rock star. But in the B community, I think that you're more respected. You're like, okay, this guy has passed for a lot through his journey, and now I think that he deserves it. So, what do you think about that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the respect is always there. I think when most of the V community know how hard it is to achieve a VCDX, and it's not only technical prowess. I know a lot of technical people out there that aren't VCDXs that are still utterly fantastic at their job, but to do the VCDX, the time and dedication it takes, that earns you that respect because people know how difficult it is. And regarding the kind of the way you carry yourself almost, because you're learning and you're doing VCDX day in, day out, you acquire tons and tons of knowledge, tons of ways of tackling different problems. So you're almost bettering yourself every single day. So the VCDX kind of helps with that element as well.
Okay. Chris, we have a question for Leonardo.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking about mentors. When do we need them? At the beginning of the journey or later once the submission done? I'm quite lost in this part. Thanks.
So for the mentor, first of all, I would decide that this is something you want to do. So you get a lot of people looking at doing the VCDX, and then when they start investigating it and seeing how long it actually takes, how much money it costs, that kind of thing, you get a fair few people drop out. So first of all, make sure it's something that you want to do. So make sure you can cover the cost, or the business can cover the cost. Think of a project that you want to do, whether it be real or fake, like I said, and then look into that, read the blueprint, and then realistically think to yourself, can I attain this? Is this something I want to do over the next 6, 12, 18 months? If all of those answers are yes, then that's when I would go find yourself a mentor. That's the kind of time where you can. So that's when I found Luca, and I spoke to him and I said, this is the kind of project I want. This is the kind of project that I have, and this is how I'm going to tackle it. Do you think this is a valid kind of design? The designs don't need to be particularly complex. They don't need to be particularly large. They can be as complex and as large as you like, but sometimes simple, small designs can get through. So discuss that with a mentor. That's the kind of stage. But make sure you're definitely wanting to go through with it before you reach out to a mentor.
Yeah, Mohammed saying you have to build a new mindset and skill set to be able to tackle the VCDX. To be honest, there's a big gap of skills that need to be built between big cap and VCDX. Mohammed, as a big cap, I can say yes. For example, now we can see a clear difference. I'm a big cap. I only have the design one, the deploy one, and I can tell you that between me and Chris, besides experience, I know for sure he has. I mean, he take a lot of time just for the for just to submit the documentation, because I know that it took a lot of time. Not only the technical part. I mean, there could be a lot of gap over. There could be a big gap or not. Maybe it depends really in your daily job. But I think the all besides the technical part, presentation, workshop, the methodology, for example, are quite important to do that. And also, what I find more difficult, for example, for me, it will be, for example, the defendant scenario, a scenario that is not yours. For example, I think Chris can reply this better than me.
Yeah. So as far as the difference between the VCAP, the VCIXs, and the VCDXs, yeah, sure, there is a difference. But I was a VCDX, and I felt that there was a massive gap there between what I had and what it takes to have a VCDX. But you learn it over the journey. That's why it takes so long. Imagine everything you do in your design. For me, for networking, okay, I picked uplinks in this specific way, and you have to ask yourself why, because you need to defend that. So slowly you're reading little articles, and you're gaining pockets of knowledge. And then over that 6, 12, so I've been doing it for 14 months now. So for 14 months, I've just been building small pockets of knowledge. So yes, the gap seems large, but I think there's something to be said for just working a little bit every day. And then over a 6, 12, 18 months, you'll end up becoming a VCDX kind of without even knowing it. Maybe it'll take you a few goes to get the VCDX, but you're kind of up there. You're punching in that category. So yeah, I think it does take some time to get there, but it's not going to be one leap. It's over a course of time. And there was a second portion to that question, right?
Okay, if there are no more questions, I think we can end it for today. We maybe will have Chris in later sessions. We'll see. As he will probably be quite busy with his VCDX difference. Because I know I know this. Well, I told with a lot of people with about the defense and the day that takes the defense. Well,
yeah, it takes a lot of prep. Like you said, the scenario one where you don't know what's coming, you need to kind of prepare for everything within your area, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have to be prepared for everything your track. Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, thank you for joining us. We will upload this to the YouTube channel for vBrownBag. I suppose next week, for example, I think. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Chris. You have their his Twitter handle, or to me, or to vBrownBag if you want to. Thank you, and have a good evening and good afternoon, or wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.
Bye.